Ladies and gentlemen, Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 2 has now arrived on Netflix. And of course, this is something we've all been waiting to see how it would turn out. Because of course, with Part 1, it was hit with a bunch of controversy. Because this was a series that everybody was super excited for. Not only original fans of Masters of the Universe and He Man, already fans of the franchise, but also newcomers like me who didn't really know much about this franchise but knew it was big and it was going to be a big deal, so was still excited for this series. And of course, when Part 1 came out, it was met with a bunch of controversy because of the things that happened in literally the first episode with the death of He Man and Skeletor and all that stuff. Obviously, they came back at the end, but then also He Man got killed but not killed at the same time. So yeah, there was just a whole bunch of controversy surrounding Part 1, and a lot of people just did not enjoy it. If you watch my review for Part 1, you know I enjoyed it, but like not as much as I thought it would, because it just did not at all go the way I wanted to or thought it would. Because I mean, this whole series was marketed as He-Man versus Skeletor, and like that was the big thing that we were all looking forward to. And then it was just like the first 15 minutes of that first episode. But now we come into Part 2, which I was real looking forward to seeing how they would rectify things and how they would turn things around, and if they could turn things around. And I do have to say that they did. They really did, like really, really well. It's obviously not perfect. I do still have my gripes with it, but I loved it. I love Part 2. And if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend checking it out. But now we are going to start getting into spoilers. So just want to give you the quick warning there that we are going to be getting into spoilers for Master of the Universe Revelation Part 2. So one of the things that I do have a problem with in Part 2 is just I don't even know exactly what it is that I have a problem with here, but it's something that I had a problem with in Part 1 as well, where it feels like the first two episodes of this part are really good and I'm super invested in it, but then by the time you get into episode 3, I just start getting bored with it, and then I take out my phone and I'm not completely paying attention. And it was the same thing here for Part 2. First two episodes, I was sitting there, eyes were glued to the screen, and then we got into episode 3 and episode 4, and I was just bored with them. And then obviously episode 5, it was great. Episode 5, I don't even know if it was episode 5, but yeah, episode 5. Yeah, the last part was the best part probably of this whole series so far. It was such a good episode. I mean, the whole episode basically this one giant epic battle, and it was so cool. There were so many really epic, cool character moments that I enjoyed seeing there. So really, that is one thing that's kind of weird that hopefully they can maybe fix in next season. If we do get in next season, is to like keep it consistent, because again, first two episodes and last episode I was really into, but the two middle ones, I just kind of fell off it for me. But other than that, like I said, that last episode was so good. I loved that final battle. I loved all these new developments for our characters. It was just it was really cool. But now, guys, let's go ahead and talk about some of our individual characters here. Starting off with, of course, He-Man, because he's kind of the big thing that we were looking forward to in Part 2, now that we're actually getting some He-Man content in this part. And obviously, they did better with the character than they did in Part 1, because Part 1 he was barely in it. But for Part 2, he has a much bigger role. Not as big as I would have liked him to, but he does have a bigger role. And of course, as we saw in the trailers and the poster and everything, we do get to see him as Savage He-Man, which I mean, it was alright the way it was done. I do like the explanation that basically, even though he doesn't have the sword, he still has, like, he's still the conduit. He still has the power of Grayskull. It's just that when he doesn't summon it with the sword, he isn't able to fully control, and that's when he becomes Savage He-Man, which basically he's the Hulk. If you think about it, it's literally the Hulk, where Bruce Banner, he turns into the Hulk and he just loses complete control. He has all the power and this rage, but doesn't have the control over the power and rage. So that's basically what we get to see here from Savage He-Man, which again wasn't great. I mean, I'm glad that they didn't linger on it too long, so I thought that was really good, because there's not really much you can do with it. I mean, it's Savage He-Man. You can't really do that much with it, so I do really enjoy the fact that they didn't linger on it too long, and the little bit that we did get of it, it was cool for what it was. And I really enjoyed it. And of course, we also got Adam basically building his relationship with his parents. That was cool to see. Another character that I really enjoyed was Skeletor, who also wasn't exactly what I was expecting here, but not in a bad way though, because of course that was kind of the big cliffhanger at the end of part one, was that he obtained the power of Grayskull and he basically became Skelegod and he gained all this power and everything. So it's basically setting him up to be the main villain of part two, but that didn't exactly happen. At first, I was a little upset by that, but then when it actually happened, like by the end of it, I actually really liked the way things went because just this character, he's so cool. Like he's such a cool character, and just like he's so evil because even after he does have this team up with He-Man, which was pretty cool to see by the way, this team up between He-Man and Skeletor, even after that he betrays He-Man just because he wants to kill He-Man, and that's basically his big goal in life, is just to kill He-Man. He wants the power to kill He-Man. That is his big thing. So I love that even though we did get that kind of redeeming moment of Skeletor and like he's teaming up with He-Man and everything, that still he dug down into his evil roots and still betrayed Adam. So I did really enjoy seeing that there. Very in character for the character. And of course, Mark Hamill doing the voice again. Still sounds like the Joker, but that's not a bad thing. I mean, I still think he sounds like Skeletor. He looks like Skeletor, and it was a really fun character that I'm excited to see make his return in season 2, which we'll talk about that at the end of the video. Evil Lynn, speaking of main villains, she actually is the one that ends up becoming the main villain of the season, which I thought was cool in a way because throughout part one, as someone that doesn't know the mythology and wasn't really familiar with the characters from Masters of the Universe, I was just introduced to this character in part one, and she was called Evil Lynn, but part one didn't really show me that she was actually evil. So part two really did get to dive deep into that character, and you got her origin story, and really get to see why she's evil. So I did enjoy seeing that, and of course her connections to Skeletor. And although I do have to admit that the way she obtained the power of Grayskull was kind of stupid, literally just because Skeletor was horny, so he like fell for her tricks. It was kind of hilarious at the same time how stupid it was. But yeah, so she becomes the main villain, and by the end of it, she is kind of redeemed, and basically she retires. So I doubt we're going to be seeing her return, but I did enjoy seeing that character go on that journey in part two. Teela, of course, was kind of the main character of part one. She does still have a big role here. Still not the biggest fan of the characters, not really much to say except she becomes the new sorceress and like all that. So I don't know. I mean, good for her. But one other thing I did really like specifically in this final episode was the return of Orco. I really enjoyed seeing this character in part one. I was really sad when he died, and now he's not dead anymore. He's come back to life. Speaking of Orco, though, we also got the return of Scareglow, so that was cool. Just to see those characters return. Now Orco is officially alive again, so we're going to be seeing him return next time as well. So I'm glad to see some more Orco back in my life, because I really enjoyed that character. But anyways, guys, we need to talk about the ending of this season, or part, or we're not exactly even sure. But basically ends with Skeletor going back to his home, meeting up with all his henchmen, and then the motherboard basically taking control of Skeletor, as we saw a little bit happen in part one. So this is interesting because, I mean, you already spent part one into kind of focusing on Skeletor as the villain, so now we know he's returning in season 2, or whatever we get next after this, part 3, whatever you want to call it. But it's not going to be him as the main villain, but which I like, because there's only so much you can do with a character like this where he's like the main villain. Like, you can't just have him return as the main villain every single time. So I think this is a really cool way to make him return, but in a new way where he's not even the villain. He's actually being controlled by Motherboard, which is something or someone I don't really even know much about, but I'm definitely excited to find out more about them in part 2, because definitely seems like a pretty huge threat if they could take down Skeletor this easily. But anyways, guys, that was Master of the Universe Revelation Part 2. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about Part 2? Did you like it better than Part 1? Did you not like it? Let me know all your thoughts, theories, fears and predictions for season 2, what you want to see. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I can keep up to date on everything that goes on in the movie life.